All right, everybody. It's great to see you faces here, visitors in the room. Welcome to the Northampton Reparations Study Commission, April 1st, 2025. Let's see who we got. Let's do a roll. William Newman. Here. Felicia Lundquist.
Present.
Garrick Perry. Hey, Garrick might not be here right now.
He's here.
Oh, is he there?
Yeah, he said that he had to flip off his camera.
Okay, we'll come back to him. Jeremy, you here?
Here.
Great. Marissa? I know Marissa said she might be a little late. Nope, okay. Marcia?
Here.
Usman Power Green, here. Renika? Renika somewhere? Let's see. I saw Rachel. Rachel, you here? Here. And Jasmine?
Here.
Here. And Imacon. Is Imacon on there somewhere? No? All right, go back to Garrick, you here? All right, we'll swing back here. All right, before we get started, if people have a chance to look at the minutes. Yeah, approval of the minutes.
I move approval of the minutes.
Minutes.
I second that.
Second it? All right, the minutes are approved. So I can get to business here. All right, so our first.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Garrick. There you are. Hey, Garrick.
Hi. When you make a motion, you then have to do a roll call vote to.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Okay, roll call vote to approve the minutes. Bill?
Yes.
Felicia?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
And Marissa? Is Marissa on? I don't think so. Marcia?
Yes.
Usman Power Green, yes. Renika, I don't think is here. Rachel?
Yes.
And Jasmine?
Yes.
Imacon, I don't see, so. All right, minutes are approved. Let us pass the mic to Jasmine for a grounding.
All right. Canupium, welcome all of our friends in the audience. This is sort of unusual, but bear with it. So this grounding will serve to get us all on the same page and set us in the time and space that we are. So I would invite everyone to close your eyes if you feel comfortable. If not, keeping them open, a soft focus is fine. I ask everyone to feel your feet on the ground, to feel your breath moving through your body. Notice any place where you hold pain or tension. Breathe into those places. And as you breathe, imagine that your feet connect into the earth with long roots going down. Find where those roots connect to your ancestors. Say hello to your ancestors. And breathe. Remembering that we are all here, working together, using a colonial practice to discuss reparations. Sometimes it might be tense, but ground yourself in the idea that this is community. We are all fighting for the same thing. We are all fighting for a better future for the next 7 generations, the ones after that. We are working to leave a better earth. Thinking about the injustices of the past and the future that you hope to see. Take another deep breath. Leaving at the door any trouble you had this day. Opening your eyes, taking a look at the people around you. Maybe offering them a smile. You may not know them. Even so, we are community. And I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. I needed that. Whew. Thank you. All right. Next item on our agenda is public comment, and we have people in the public. So does someone want to go first?
Yes.
Introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yes. Hi, good evening. I don't know if you can hear me very well on this. Good evening, members of the Reparations Study Commission. My name is Allison Wright. I am a resident of Northampton, a member of First Churches Northampton, and represent First Churches on the Northampton Interfaith Reparations Roundtable. Other members of the roundtable include B'nai Israel, St. John's, the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence, Edwards Church, Northampton Friends, and more to come. So first, I'd like to thank the Commission for all of its hard work moving this important racial justice issue forward. And that includes the survey, the interviews, and issuing a very detailed report that gives critical facts about the treatment of people of African descent here in the city of Northampton. So thank you for that important work and that knowledge spreading that you're doing. Second, at our last roundtable meeting, we discussed the importance of including more details about history of slavery in Northampton in the final report of this commission, with links to resources like the Cost of Inheritance film, links to the racial covenant info in the deeds that were talked about in the report, information about the Underground Railroad that the Ruggles Center has in their tour. We also discussed the Porter Phelps Huntington Museum as another resource and the impact of the Fugitive Slave Act in the city of Northampton. So those are the things that we really wanted to bring to the Commission's attention today. And again, thank you for your time and consideration of this information.
All right, thank you. It's good to see you after phone tag.
Yes, I know.
We still got to get together.
we
We'll
will.
still get up. Okay. Okay, anyone else? Back? No? All right. Let's move on to event announcements. Did you want to talk about Tower of Truth, or should I? Or you have other things? So, commissioners, this is the 4th annual Power of Truth's Arts Education Activist Festival. This is going on at Bombeck's this Friday and Saturday. Friday is mostly for youth in the community to come together for a group of speakers dealing with issues around racial justice, social justice. And then Saturday is the more event that hopefully people will be able to attend who aren't working on Friday. Last year, we represented, the commission represented at the Power of Truths, one of our early community engagement events, which had a pretty large group of people to sort of share information about reparations, about the work we were doing. And so I just wanted to officially encourage everybody to attend if you can make it, at least for part of the sessions. And look forward to seeing you. If you have any questions, or because you're all in the audience, I'll give you a discount code if you email me if you want to come. So, and of course, commissioners as well. So, just want to make that announcement. Other announcements? Anything else going on? People want to share? No?
I can share.
Okay. Oh yeah, Felicia.
I sent this in an email, but it's an opportunity for anti-racist development groups for professional development, both for cohorts of people of color and white cohorts. It's an opportunity to build through an 8-week small group cohort program where there's learning and reflection and support designed to help create concrete actions in workplaces and your organizations around anti-racist development. And so for anyone that's interested in that, we are starting our cohort for white folks starting in April, and currently we're doing our anti-racist development group for managers of color, which I'm participant in, and if anyone wants to get more details, you can certainly contact me. But again, as we do this work and think about our practices and behaviors, I think it could be a great opportunity and very beneficial to folks.
Great. All right. If no other event updates, let's move on to general commission updates, surveys, outreach reports. I'll start and pass to others who want to share, because I'm looking at this and I'm not seeing any other outreach. So since we met last in March, we've been engaged I wrote my notes down, pretty heavily with the community. Obviously not as much as the Community Engagement Initiative we did before that, but on March 12th, I was on a panel representing the commission at the Cost Inheritance screening, which took place at Amherst Cinema, which was a great lively roundtable discussion afterwards that included members of Amherst, Reparations Commission, and others. Kathleen Anderson was there as well. And so that was one thing that was sort of an opportunity to sort of do some networking, link up. And maybe, Marcia, were you prepared to mention about our statewide meeting? Or do you want me to? Okay, I'll pass that to you to say we can talk more about that. Second thing was meeting with Smith College students. I had a meeting with the head of the BSU, and my goal is right now, though I'm not sure if the timing is going to work actually because something has come up, but is to meet with the BSU and to share a preliminary report, share the work we've done, and then get feedback from them about their impressions of sort of the same questions that we've been asking for in-depth interviews and through the community survey. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity, and we're still. I've been sort of corresponding through email with some members of the staff at Smith, so that's still sort of in the works. So when I have more about from them, I'll make sure I include that to all you all. Also, and maybe one of the more significant public engagement efforts we've had is sending out, we mentioned sending out letters, correspondence to the financial and other institutions. So we did that, since our last meeting. And I would say that one kicked back. I think it was the Bank of America, maybe New York City one, maybe, but by and large, we've got 4 responses. Bill, UMass, you want to take this one? And
well, we've gotten responses from Smith College, from Smith Charities, from UMass 5 College Credit Union, from one other. From one other local institution. We have not received a response back from any of the out-of-town institutions. There are 3 others I suspect we should probably write anyway. They're out of town. They haven't been here for a long time, and they have almost no presence in Massachusetts. But I guess in the nature of completeness, we should send the last 3. So we'll get those out this week. So we've had 4 or 5 responses. The intent is to include those responses in the final report, because the letter from Usman, as the chair, says we're writing you to see what response you'd like to make, and we're going to include it in the final report. And since we promised it, we should do it. And since they knew that's what it was going to be included in, we should do it. So we have them. The responses were all non-committal. On the other hand, we didn't ask for a commitment. So I thought on the whole they have served the purpose. There are statements on what the institutions feel, at least in general, in response to our preliminary report, and I think that's useful for our final report and will be useful for the implementation commission that follows us.
Excuse me, are you intending on circulating the responses so we can see them?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it would be good. I was trying to write down the ones that you said had responded, but you said Smith College.
Yep.
The Smith College Charities, is that what you said?
It's Smith Charities. It's not Smith College Charities.
Okay, it's Smith Charities. And then what were the other 2?
There's UMass 5 College Credit Union. They were the bank that was, or the financial institution that responded first after there was some publicity about this, which they reference in their letter back to us. And there's one other. Smith Charities was, can you send us the information? We did. UMass 5 College Credit Union's first response was, can you send us the information? And we did. And I just can't remember the 4th one.
So the response has been, can you send me the information?
I'm sorry?
Is that the response? Can you send the information over?
I just can't hear. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm saying, is the response from the banks or the institutions so far, that they've asked for the information?
Two of them asked for information. We sent the information to both. One was to Smith Charities. We haven't had a response to that information. The first request for information came from the UMass 5 College Credit Union. We sent them the information, and they sent a quite, compared to the others anyway, expansive letter back.
Okay, so it'd be really great if
Can
that...
I read the Smith College one to you? It's short. It's short. So Smith College wrote back to us. Thank you for reaching out to President Willie LeBretons with your inquiry. I'm responding to her on her behalf as the college general counsel. The language referenced in your report is undeniably at odds with Smith's values. It's not uncommon for historical records to contain archaic language, including racially restricted covenants. Although it's not feasible to retroactively amend such provisions, federal and state laws have long rendered discriminatory provisions unenforceable and therefore moot. However, we recognize that the presence of such language carries powerful symbolic weight and is deeply painful. We are grateful to this committee for its meticulous work, which has allowed us to engage more fully with both the commendable and difficult aspects of Northampton's history. So it's about a paragraph. And I'll put that in that same folder, Marcia, so you can look at it and analyze it.
Yeah, I'd like to see all of the responses. Okay,
Yeah, that was like the most
so basically,
acknowledgement. Yeah, like sort of like acknowledging it, but, you know, essentially,
Still passive.
yeah.
but what was the goal of doing this?
The goal was to A, inform them the commission exists, and B, to ask any responses for the deeds that they had, right? So we put like the ones that they were responsible for, and to hear their response to it. That was the purpose of it.
Okay.
All right.
There's a hand raised on Zoom.
Oh, yes, hand raised on Zoom.
Could we get the gallery thing so we can see people?
Yeah, because I can't.
Who does that?
He's doing it.
Okay.
He's got it.
I have a comment, question.
Go ahead, Rachel.
It's Rich. Hi. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Oh, my God. So I thought that one thing is that we were going to try to amend the language in the restrictive deeds. And so I hear from that letter that was read, well, we can't really go back retrospectively and do anything about this. And the second comment I wanted to make was, we also had talked about whether they would like to make some kind of recompense or amend by financially giving money towards the needs that this commission is going to recommend that we go forward with.
Okay. Yeah, that's their response. So, you know, we could talk about how we go about that, what you just said.
Okay.
Steps.
Yeah, in terms of next step. I mean, again, you know, our role here, just to remind everyone, is to do this exact work, is to do research, to inform and find out and figure out everything we can, and to what degree the city council, mayor, and the next commission seeks to draft that. That's, I look forward to hearing what the ideas are to do that. You know, so yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, just two things. First of all, I don't mean to parse the letter too intensely. I would say that it is in fact possible to remedy the existence of the language in presently operative deeds and to make that extinguish that language without extinguishing the history of the deeds themselves. And I think that is the purpose of the affidavit that Register Mary Olberding has prepared. I've asked for it. I haven't gotten a copy of it, but hopefully soon. So I think that statement, as you've reformulated it anyway, or as I think reasonably could be reformulated to say that, is not entirely accurate. At least it would need to be amended to say you can't make the past history disappear, and I don't think anyone intends to make the history disappear, but there is a remedy for the language itself in deeds going forward. So I hope that addresses the question. And we'll see that language because it's a public document once Mary Olberding has them, prepares them, and files them.
Yep.
It seems as though I'm not really sure what to say to the letter, because I I'm not sure that that gives us any historical understanding of anything. I'm not sure it helps us understand where the banks stand or anything. That seems like sort of, I'm not sure of the point of all of that.
Yeah, so the point is to hear what their response is, to know, first of all, if they even aware that they still are responsible for controlling racist deeds, is to gather information from them about that. That's the point of it.
But
right?
Did we get any information from them?
No, but the point is to try.
It sounds to me like...
I just sent it around to you, by the way, Marcia, so if you want to look through it, you can.
Yeah, I will.
It sounds to me like this initial push is just to inform, and now we've collected the responses, and the next step is to ask for repair in some kind of way.
Potentially.
Am I correct?
Well,
Sure. Potentially, yeah.
With the next commission.
we're supposed to be
Yeah.
making recommendations, but I'm not sure. To me, that doesn't feel like we can make a recommendation based on that.
Totally agree with you.
There's no real engagement by sending a letter and then the person sends you back a letter. That doesn't feel like engagement to me. But it depends on what engagement we're really talking about, especially because the banks play a critical role in the historical part of the oppression of African American people. Now, mind you, they weren't banks back then. They were like, I was reading up on this. They were more like insurance companies that were insuring African American people, but that doesn't seem to clarify their role in the oppression and the ongoing nature of slavery. So I don't understand what...
Yeah, I agree.
If the intention is to get money from them...
Oh, there's a hand raised, yeah.
I'm not crazy about that idea, but I'm not opposed to... let's talk about it, but, I feel like
I want to talk
the
about
banks... Can I just finish my sentence? The banks have not had a very good history of fulfilling their commitments to African American communities. DEI and all this stuff that's going on is just another example of that. It's not the only, certainly. So that's what I felt about that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Felicia.
It feels like a nothing burger.
I think from listening to the letter that you read, there was a piece there where there was recognition, or at least acknowledgement, right? And I think that one of our commissioners said, something about repair, and the next steps are we can make a recommendation. The recommendation to begin to resolve and repair. That might be some type of, there's lots of ways to being able to do that. So I wouldn't throw this all away and say we didn't gain something from this. We were able to gain visibility in terms of who we are and what we're doing, and we had the opportunity to allow individuals to acknowledge and admit and recognize that there's very painful language and that this is happening. And the next recommendation could be working on, can we build a collective where we're able to use maybe fund, are there monetary or ways to repair that in terms of financial?
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
I think the recommendation actually is that, or should be, that the next commission, the implementation commission, follow up with this information. The responses, at least from two of the institutions, make clear that they are saying, we didn't know about this, please give us the information. So I think we have gained quite a bit of information. I think the statements that they've made are helpful, and I think that they do not in any way foreclose the kind of communication and engagement that we've been talking about. And I think that's the next commission's work.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Implementation Commission.
All right.
I don't agree with that. I understand where people are coming from, but this was our concern when Renika and I raised issues around this, that we were going about this in a way that wasn't going to produce any fruit. And part of that was, we were concerned that there wasn't a group of African American people focused on this and talking about what is the point of doing this work. And I feel like we still need to come back to that, because the role of the banks in the oppression of African Americans, especially when they were insurance companies, is huge. It's a part of the triangle work that was being done. And it's not just about that language in those documents. And I think when we move to the discussion of the statewide work, we'll touch on that, because that's a little teeny weeny piece of that, and not a very large, that was the minimal thing that's still left in place. I guess it means something if there's work that comes out of it, but language is not, at this point. I understand what the registrar wanted to do, and I agreed with her, but in terms of the ameliorating what has happened to the African American community, that has nothing, that's not going to do anything. So that's all I had to say on that.
Okay, yeah, Jasmine.
Well, I think it sounds like we're all on the same page, but kind of off the page, where we've done this great work. Thank you for everyone who started this great work with finding those racially restrictive covenants and reaching out to those banks and getting the name out there, right? No, they now know that this is something that is happening. And my understanding is that this is not the implementation committee. This is the study committee, where we're finding those things. And then we will move towards action. But right now, we're just doing the groundwork of getting that information known and ready for the group that is going to implement it eventually. Is that correct?
I pray.
Right, but
And before you go, though, Marcia, can we let Garrett go?
Oh,
Garrett's
sorry.
been wanting to jump in. That's okay. Let's let Garrett jump in.
Thank you. It's hard when you're not there physically. It's very more forgetting. But so I want to thank everyone for their comments, and where I am at is I just want to let folks know that a lot of the things that we uncovered was lack of data, omission of information means a lot. And so what we've been doing here, what we've been able to do, is actually find data and now enter these things into public record. These responses will now be public record. Mm-hmm. The acknowledgement of wrongs done are public record. And while I understand what Marcia is saying, it's a teeny tiny piece, but this work is done incrementally. Mm-hmm. Every piece is part of a bigger puzzle. And so it is important to make sure that we get all of those pieces together and gathered so the work continues. And I just want to push back a little bit about language. Language is very important. Language is how a lot of laws against folks are utilized in incorrect ways or be utilized against people. So it is very, as a person who spent most of my life dealing with language, and whether in school but also on stage, I think it's really important to hone in on these things. Mm-hmm. And I also agree with everyone who is saying that, the recommendation is that we continue communication with these institutions. We are passing the baton to say this is the first step. It is not the last step. And we have to always be aware that, we are working in an environment where other people will continue doing this work, I hope.
All right, Bill, and then Marcia.
Just two comments. One is that the institutions that have responded include two institutions that are not banks. And one of the institutions, I can't remember now whether Northampton Cooperative Bank, which is of course part of Greenfield Cooperative Bank, responded or not, but the cooperative banks are owned by their depositors. They're owned by the people in the community. And so I think that when we look at the communities of interest and those communities that will be, as they become better informed of our work and our the compilation of the information that we have done in the preliminary report, which will be incorporated, of course, in the final report as well, is there are communities that will, I think, coalesce around this information, and that, of course, will be part of the legacy of this commission.
I think when we talk about the statewide work, we can come back to this, but I feel like, what you're talking about in terms of that language is a very, very shallow look at what is the role that these institutions played in the 400 years, basically, of slavery, and how people buying property is one part of the piece of the puzzle of real estate. People renting. And I don't agree with this notion that we've always known there's a lack of information. As a matter of fact, I've never agreed with that. There's a ton of information about all of these things we wanted to know. It's about digging to find it. And I'm not sure why people keep saying we can't find the information. Name a place where we can't find information, and we can look at various comments that have been housed at the Forbes Library. We can find interviews with slaves at the historic Northampton. These things aren't true. I don't know why people keep saying that. The African American Museum even has information about Massachusetts. I'm not sure why. That was never true. I'm not sure why people were pushing that, but I'll leave it at that. I'll pick this back up when we get to the statewide work.
Okay.
Wait. Can I say one?
Oh, you want to respond to that? Okay, go ahead, Garrick. Is that okay? Jasmine, if Garrick, are you going to respond to that?
I'll also respond.
Okay, you go first. Garrick, you got to wait a sec.
Okay, Garrick, or would you like to go first?
I'm fine. I just have a direct response to that last piece.
Yeah. Go for it.
And I just want to say thank you, Jasmine, for giving me the space. Is that I'm not saying that there's not information to be had. What I have stated, and I will continue to state, is that data. We have found that, for instance, the data on how many people of color have served in administrative positions was lacking. The collection of data has been lacking. I'm not saying that every bit of information does not exist, but I'm saying there are holes and there are gaps in that information, and that is something that we have identified, and I think that it's important to make sure that we look for and move forward doing is our due diligence in collection of data and those statistics and other forms of information. So I don't want to be confused with saying there's no information on slavery out there. That's not what I said. It's not what I've been saying. I'm saying that there is a lack of information, for instance, of how many people of color have served in the city council. There is a lack of some of that data.
I 100% agree. Yeah, the information is there. We know it's there. It's held in oral traditions. It's held in the memories of the people around us and some files that we can find. But I think a lot of it is puzzling these things together and figuring out what is accessible and what hasn't been made accessible to people. And just with the work that I do in the indigenous world, right, people know about land theft. People recognize it. You can say, yes, this land is native land, and we know we should do repair somewhere. But you have to know the things that happened leading up to that. You have to pull out the information leading up to that. Who signed the deed? Was it made up, right? Not all of that information has been researched and found everywhere yet. So yes, we absolutely are uncovering these things for the first time, but they, in some instances, but they have always existed. You're absolutely right. The information is there, but where was it pushed under the carpet, right? Where was it hidden in boxes in some library somewhere? And we have to find that information in a lot of these situations, like digging for the racially restrictive covenants.
Yep. All right, Bill.
Finding the racially restrictive covenants wasn't that difficult for the, well, I went over and spoke to the lady that brought that information, and they were now going back beyond the 1800s, then the 1700s. They were now digging into the 1700s. That's where it was less clearer information, just because back then the way land was acquired may not have been the same way it was, once the Americas began to establish various things that had to be done to buy land. But even she's going back and digging through all that information now. So I'll leave it at that till we get to the statewide board.
Go ahead, Bill.
The folks in my office and I spent about 150 hours on this. So it's true, the information is public record, as we say. Compiling it was important. The other thing I want to say is there's other information, and Sage, we need to talk about this after the meeting. But for example, one thing that we say in our preliminary report is there's information about discipline and graduation rates from Northampton High School, some. We say it's not really readily available from Smith Voc. And there was communication with Smith Voc. We'll include that response in our final report. And I think as a result of uncovering that information, which truly was out there in the world, but people know it. So I think that the compilation of the material and putting it in a form that is available and accessible and can be utilized by people in the community is a public service.
100%.
Where are you getting the idea that we could not get the Smith information? Where are you getting that from? We went to the Smith High School. What are you talking about?
We're talking about the information that he shared, remember? He put on the charts?
They were very open about giving us information.
Yeah.
You're talking about Smith Voc. You're not talking about
That's
Smith.
what I said, Smith
Right.
Voc.
And he said that he could find that information.
Yes,
He would-
and I'm thrilled that he said he could find it, and I'm
Right.
thrilled that we asked, and I'm thrilled that we're going to make it public. I'm thrilled, but I'm satisfied. I think that's a public service.
Yeah.
We asked the question, he responded honestly, directly, and said he'd provide the information, and he could get it. God bless his right.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And he
Same
also
thing.
gave us his understanding, after looking at his system for quite some time, of his concerns about what was happening with African American students. But he never said he couldn't get the information.
You know, and I never said he said he couldn't get it. I, in fact, said quite the opposite. And what I'm saying, and I'm thrilled that he has said that he'll compile the information and provide it, and will provide his responses, and we thank the superintendent for his responses.
And that is a perfect transition before we talk about, and how are we doing with the UMass students?
They're here.
Oh, hi. You're watching your time go away. They're like looking at it like that. They said 15 minutes. I'm trying to be out. I have a couple of things before.
statewide?
Yeah. I just want to, in the spirit of gathering data for the final report, I think this would be an appropriate time to talk about what needs to happen. So we're going to make this list here. It'll be emailed, but we're going to say it aloud now. In terms of information gathering, okay, so these are the tasks that we need to accomplish to help finish this report. I mean, beyond some of the writing that I have not been able to get as much done as I wanted to. Okay, so the first thing is we need which Sage began the process of by putting it together. We need a list of all the presenters to the commission, right? So one, we need to have a list of all the presenters, and we need to have commissioners who are in attendance at the different commission or the people who presented to us to volunteer to be able to write about what information we derived from what they said. Right. We have the transcript, but ultimately in the final report, we need to summarize that and explain it. So that's one big. It's not. I mean, it won't be a big task. We divide it up with all the commissioners, and people just take some And so that's the first thing that needs to happen for us to get to the end here. The second is that over the next couple of weeks, we attempt to write down some of the work that we've done. And I know that Marcia's done a lot of community engagement work. We just need to get that in one place so we can sort of like include and share that in a cohesive way to put in the final report. I feel like I have a sense of some of the community engaged work, but I know there's other work that's I've heard about and people have talked about, but we need to get it written down so we can actually put all the work people have done in the final report. And, we need, as I said, I'll just repeat it one more time, we need people to volunteer to be able to write paragraph, whatever it is, we need that to happen. I can bring it together, Sage, others who want to help edit into a coherent thing, that's fine, but we at least need these pieces being brought together in one place so we're able to actually make it into a final report. So as we're thinking about, that includes obviously the survey information, which I've been working through, which is a little less difficult in some ways than it is to, I don't know how great everyone's notes have been, but to recount last year when someone spoke to us. I mean, Sage wasn't even here for some of the one, for many of them last year. So we really do need that task to be done. So as far as I'm concerned, once we have, all those pieces of information, hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to get a draft going to then circulate and begin to get done. So I did want to point that out. I had a conversation with at least one commissioner that, wanted to know, like, what are the steps we need to do, and that is the answer. Those are the primary tasks. The introduction, some of what the questions that were asked about including slavery, those things, I've been working on that, and I'm also working with Historic Northampton on their project, so I have a lot of the language that they have, I'm basically rewriting a lot of it because it is actually pretty coherent, the work that they're doing over there for their presentation, so that will be in it. So I wrote those down, but the details, so that'll be in it as well. So that's the main task. Before I pass it to Marcia, any questions about those tasks at all? Does that make sense? Any other suggestions on ways to get to the promised land here?
Yeah. I don't know if you said it or I think you said it, but with you're going to share the information about the upcoming living and laboring in business of slavery in Rhode Island.
Oh, actually, you know what? Thank you for reminding me in the announcements. What day is that? Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah, I do. I registered for it. It's on Thursday, April 10th at 7 p.m.
Great.
And you have to register in advance, and they'll send you the information. But I think this would again align with the work that we're doing. So it'd be great if people participated.
Yeah, and so you're compelling me to be clearer. What I'm talking about, there's right now what's going on, and this is an announcement, is a series of lectures on slavery in New England, et cetera. But more specifically, I'm on the, steering committee, whatever it is, to do an actual exhibition on slavery in Northampton, right? So that is just not, it's like public kind, I keep talking about it, but that's a meetings I've been going to, I missed the last one, with designers who are doing an exhibition on that. And there's a lot of copy written that'll be obviously very valuable because it's brought together the research that people have done. Okay, so that's just, does that make more sense, Felicia? So it's like, so it's in coordination with that lecture series, but it's something different. And I think maybe next fall it's gonna, the actual exhibition may come out. You know what I mean? We're in the process of doing it right now.
When is Thursday open?
It is an event by scholars that teach at University of Wisconsin-Madison on slavery. What's the title again, Felicia? Slavery, and she does stuff on Rhode Island.
Hold on.
It's basically about slavery in New England. Actually, Marcia.
It's slavery and freedom in Northampton and the colonial North. It's living and laboring in the business of slavery in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And it's Dr. Christy Clark-Pujada.
Yes.
University of Wisconsin-Madison.
And actually, Marcia, a lot of her work, her book on the business of slavery, is about a lot of the things you brought up about transatlantic slave trade, but it's just about Rhode Island as opposed to Massachusetts. Okay, so.
Rachel has her hand raised.
Oh, sorry, Rachel, go ahead. I can't even see.
Going back for 1 second to, you were saying
the
about
tasks.
The presenters that we had, like maybe 10 or so presenters in the last 2 years. So then, as I understand it, Sage is going to come up with a list of the presenters and when they presented, and then we are going to volunteer to go look at the transcripts or look at the video or look at the minutes and come up with a brief summary.
Yes.
What we made from that, correct?
Yes. Yes. Thank you for clarifying. That's exactly what the goal is, to be able to get that done. All right. So any more questions? That seems pretty clear, hopefully. All right. That being said, statewide convening last Thursday, Marcia, right?
Well, do you want to start?
I mean, I could give an overview. Marcia and I represented our commission at a Massachusetts statewide convening of around reparations. There were representatives from various towns, Melrose, for example, Boston. They're engaged in reparations, and so people presented what's happening in their space. Amilcar Shabazz gave somewhat of like a little bit of a shorter keynote, 15-minute presentation, and we talked a bit about our work. So that's sort of the overview. Yeah, tell me what you got out of it, Marcia, or how you want to add.
What I thought was really important about the statewide was the work that's going on in these 6 communities. One of them is City Mission Society, which is a huge nonprofit, Episcopal, I believe it's Episcopal.
Yeah, it is Episcopal. Yeah.
And they actually have committed to 15% of their budget, about $2.5 million, to be used for reparations. Various things. They don't know what it's going to be for yet in terms of where they're going to put the money, but they do know that they want to get it out into the community. And of course, they raise the issues of when anytime you put $2.5 million out on the street, all the issues that come up with that, and that they're trying to figure out what's the best way to do it because they don't want to control it. Melrose, Boston, were talking about specifically. There were reps from the state and reps and the senators' office talking about legislation that they've created that has been introduced to the Massachusetts legislation that's being considered. They also wanted people to push the legislators to help them to ensure that work gets passed, doing a reparations study in Massachusetts. What I found the most interesting of the whole thing is looking at the work that was being done across the state. Just six cities and towns, right? But imagine there's over 220 cities and towns in Massachusetts. 6 are doing this work. And they're doing the work in very meaningful ways, and that's what I found both hopeful and sad that it's only 6 areas. Mm-hmm. And what I would say that I think it represented a need for us to do what someone has already come forward and talked about, which is to lay out the history in a much more concrete way so that it's clear what the role of the North was in its complicity in slavery. Because slavery wasn't really used here for the work that was done like in the South. Slavery was much more business related here, but it was a very important piece of that triangle. And that's the work, that's the information we haven't dedicated ourselves to really culling out and putting into the report, because that's what's important about Northampton and this whole Massachusetts area. So slavery started in Massachusetts. It got concretized in Massachusetts. Why did that happen is important. Then what did it look like in each one of the cities? And we're focused on Northampton, and that we don't have a clear map of And that's the work that I think we still need to do. So, and just listening to the other cities and the work that they're doing, Boston in particular, sounds like they're doing a really deep dive on the work that happened in Boston, the Fugitive Slave Act, and the way in which they tried to protect slaves. They were getting into more of the details.
And we should probably mention, Marcia, that our state senator, one of our state senators, Joe Comerford, is one of the people that signed, is a part of the bill. So just to mention that, in terms of our representation out here in Northampton and Western Mass. So, Jasmine, question about any of that or comments?
A comment. I don't know if this is helpful to that, but the request from this commission was received by the Human Rights Commission for an apology letter, which we have drafted. And that does include some of the town history from the early years through to Jonathan Edwards, which we talked about last time, and through to the enslavers coming through and summering, and the continued ignorance of willful ignorance that Northampton has held over all those years.
Great.
I also think the important piece of this, as you say that, is in any study, there's things that you're going to find that you didn't know about or that are surprising. We need to be collecting that information as well so that we can put that into the report. And we also need to collect the information like what I call short-term wins, because along the way, things will come up that will immediately be dealt with, and so we should be collecting those as well. And those are important things to put in a study.
Okay. Great. All right. Yeah, go ahead, and then we'll let our UMass students.
Yeah, I'd love to. 30 seconds. For anyone who is would be willing to do this, if you have updates or corrections on any matters in the preliminary report, it'd be very helpful to hear that. Share with everyone. I, in particular, would love to see it because I would like to take on, making those corrections and additions and updates. For example, very simple, we're now going to have a bill number, a House and Senate bill number for the study of reparations, statewide study of reparations. We should update that. We should be as accurate as possible and as up to date as possible. So if you go through the report and anything like that, that would be really helpful.
Great. Thank you. All right. We've had our UMass student presenters waiting for a little bit. So I think that at this point, let's pass the mic to them.
Just to set the stage for the UMass
great.
students, this is under the work of the community engagement. Carolyn Oppenheimer had sent us sort of an ask from UMass Public Health to see if there were internships that we could set up for students. And so this work has been a part of the internship work that we put together. And just under our committee has been a really busy month. We've asked for the churches and the synagogues to do a write-up for the report on the work that they've done as a part of the roundtable, and the work that they were doing before it became the roundtable. And then we've also looked at the work from the Carolyn Oppenheimer had brought up the work from the 1840, 1850, 1860 survey, and we then decided to look at the current data on Northampton residents so that we can go back and compare that to the 1840s, 1850s, 60s survey. That's part of the work, but this is the first part, is to get a sort of picture of what is the state of African Americans that we know so far in the state of Massachusetts and Northampton. And then we're working on the work that's being done with the high schools. We're going into the Northampton High School to do the revamped survey, which we hope will get us information that we can then craft out focus group and interview guide that will help to guide us to get good information from the young people. They will then be added to that list of 100 Black people that we're building toward. Anything you want to add about the tech school and where we're at with that?
We're going to do our best to replicate the process at Northampton High at Smith Voc, and we're working on it.
Thank you. Jeremy, did you want to add anything before the students come up?
No, nothing to add.
Okay, which is going. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at are the statistical information for Northampton now.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, commissioners. I will first off like to introduce myself. My name is Melissa Joseph. I am currently a student from UMass Amherst, and I am majoring in public health science, and I have a specific concentration in health policy and management. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So I will be presenting issues related to income and asset disparities that are currently impacting the Black community. And so we can, next slide. So in terms of our agenda, I will first be going over a demographic overview of like the overall population makeup. Then I'll go into the income and gap disparities that I found, as well as information regarding poverty status, along with home ownership and renter rates. And then hopefully I'll finish off and I will be able to take questions. So this graph that I created 3 pie charts that basically represent the population percentage makeup. And this is on the basis of race. And this information was pulled from the U.S. Census Bureau of 2020. And so when starting off, the pie chart on the left pretty much represents the United States as like a whole. And when looking into that, there is an estimated total of 331 million people that are currently living in the United States. But of that, Black people make up about 13.7% of the US population. So in broader terms, that's less than 15% of the population. And so when moving over to the middle pie chart, that represents the statewide population. And currently in Massachusetts, there is an estimated number of 7.03 million people living within our state. And of that, Black people make up about 9.6% of the population. So that, in broader context, it's less than 10% of the population. And so finally, when we move on to the final pie chart on the far right, that represents the population percentage that is seen in this specific municipality of Northampton. And so currently, or as of in 2020, there was an estimated amount of 29,573 people living in Northampton. And of that, Black people make up about 2.1% of the Northampton population. So when referring to census, that's about 915 people in total, so less than 1,000. Next slide. So here basically highlights the overall national median income Yeah, so here, this basically represents the national average median income, and this was specifically looking at the year 2020. So when looking at the general population, the median household income amounted to $67,521, followed by whites, which was $74,912. And then you see here that black households earned the lowest median income of about $45,870 within that year. And I think a really big, I don't want to say like a surprise, but it sort of was a surprise, but Asian households, they held the highest median income of about $94,903. And then that's followed by the Hispanic population that held the median income of $55,000. So next slide, please. So this graph basically highlights the average median income. And with this, I specifically compared the graphs of Massachusetts in the year 2020, and that's on the left. And then that's compared to a bar graph seen in the year 2023. So when looking at the table on the left, when referring to 2020, the income of black households was about $54,835. And when comparing that, that's about $34,000 lower than white households and $29,000 lower than the general population in 2020. And so when we look over to the graph on the right of 2023, it shows that the median household income of black households was actually slightly higher at $73,976. But when you're comparing that to the white households in the general population, that's $31,000 lower than whites and about $25,000 lower than the general population. So as a whole, I think that the income gaps are relatively very similar when comparing the median household income between those few years, those 2 years. So it's fair to make the conclusion that not much has changed in regards to disparity when looking at income. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, in regards to the median household income for Northampton, there were slight limitations with data. So this was actually a screenshot that was directly taken from the US Census Bureau. And it basically shows the median household income among the general population. And that was to about $78,476 per year. So the dashes that you see right under the white population, so under Black, African American, and Alaskan Native, the dash basically indicates that the data was insufficient, incomplete, or either the sample sizes were too small. So this means that they weren't able to make any estimates based off of the limited information. Next slide, please. So I think, yeah, with this graph, it's definitely, it shows a lot in terms of the poverty status comparison. And so what I did was I decided to split it up from a federal, state, and local level. So it basically highlights the percentage of individuals that are living below the poverty line of 2020. And so so the red basically represents the general population. The lighter blue color represents the white poverty status, and the darker blue represents the Black poverty status. So across all of the charts, across all boards, as far as the Black poverty status, you see that it's getting considerably higher. It's slightly lower when we're looking at Massachusetts. But when we look at Northampton, we see that the Black poverty status is up to 21.9%. And that's generally higher than both the federal and state perspective. And the same pretty much.
What are the state and the general perspective?
So in terms of like the state, in Massachusetts, the poverty rate for the general population was 9.8%. So when comparing that to Northampton, it's slightly higher at 12.5% when you're comparing the two general populations from a state and local level. And then when looking at that in regards to the white poverty status, you see in the Massachusetts column, it says that it's basically 7.9% for whites, and when you're comparing that, that's relatively higher in Northampton at 10.10%, and then it's also higher than the federal level at 8.2%.
So the Black status is higher by how much?
In comparison to
The state.
So I would say about like 2.4. Like when you're comparing it from Blacks within like the state and Blacks within the Northampton, it's a 2.4% difference. And then the same is, so when you're comparing that with the United States and Northampton, it's about like a 2% difference with that. So relatively the same. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this basically just gives you a more closer look into the poverty status as mentioned, but what I did differently here was like I didn't include the general population, so this is mainly just comparing the issues between white versus Black. The white, you see that it's indicated in the lighter blue, and the Black poverty status is indicated, as mentioned before, in the darker blue. And so, as you see right here, I think a common trend is you see that the poverty status rates are more than doubled when comparing white and Black. So that's been my key note with taking that. So next. So finally, we're going to go into the share of owner and renter rates by race. This was a graph that was specifically taken from the census as well. The left side, lighter blue column, represents the share of homeowners in accordance to race. And the right side represents the share of renters that's indicated in the darker blue. So I think that the main thing with this is the white and non-Hispanic population, as seen at the very top, it's seen that they had the highest percentage of home ownership rates at 73.1%. But in comparison to that, you see on the right, on the side where you see the share of renters, less white people are actually renting. So the renter rate was actually 50.2%. But when you look right below there, you see that the rates with the Black and African American population. And with that, you see like there's like a really big gap. So instead of like the 73.1% that you see with the whites, with Blacks, it's as low as 7.9% at a national level. And then the thing that I found interesting here is that, you know, it's more Black renters than Black homeowners, and that kind of highlights, you know, a gap in regards to like home ownership and whether or not they're able to like accumulate wealth. So in this case, the share of renters for the Black population was 18.8%. So higher. Next slide, please. And then, so this is the same, but except it's basically highlighting the home ownership rates and the renter rates among Massachusetts. So you see that it's a little bit higher. So compared to the 71.3% among whites in Massachusetts, it's 83.4%, and then that's followed by the share of white renters, which was 58.2%. And then here you see that it's significantly lower than the last with Black and African American population, and that's at 3.3%. And then followed by that, it's a similar trend where we're seeing that it's more Black renters than Black owners, and so the percentage of Black renters was seen as 9.6%. Next slide, please. So in terms of home ownerships in Northampton, there wasn't really much to go off of in terms of like census and what that really looks like in regards to like race. So the main thing that I found was, or that I wanted to highlight, was the owner-occupied housing unit rates, and this was taken between the years of 2019 and 2023. And so the home ownership in Northampton now, or as of 2020, was 57.7%, and that's closer than, or that's closer to the statewide home ownership rate in Massachusetts, which amounted to 60.4%. Next slide, please. But I think, going back off of that, I think that I have reason to believe, like just based off of like my own educational guess, I think that what we're seeing in regards to like the home ownership rates on the state and national level, you'll probably see the same thing, the same sort of trend with Northampton, but it might be a little bit worse due to the housing and disparities. But another thing that I really wanted to highlight was cost burden. And cost burden is a term that refers to the households that spend more than 30% of their income. And this could be on housing-related costs, and this includes rent, mortgage, and other utilities related to housing. Severe cost burden, this is a term, and this also occurs when households spend more than 50% of their income on housing-related costs. So, next slide, please. So this table was actually pulled from the mayor's panhandling report, and this was prepared in 2019. And the table on the left basically highlights the percentage of households that have experienced severe cost burden. And it splits it up according to race. So in this case, we see that there's a comparison between the city of Northampton as well as the city of Springfield. And when looking at this, it shows that among the Black/non-Hispanic group, 95 out of the 179 of Black households reported to spend more than 50% of their income on housing-related costs. So in terms of that, percentage-wise, that is 53.07%. In comparison to Springfield, the percentage of the Black households are cost burden was considerably lower, and I thought this was like especially surprising considering the fact that, you know, it's a much higher population. There's a much higher number of Black households, amounting to about 13,000. But of that 13,000, around 3,000 said that they spent more than 50% of their income. So in terms of that, it amounted to 23.35% of Black households that were cost burden in Springfield. But when we refer back to the US Census, in 2023, 56.2% of all Black renter households, they all experienced cost burden nationwide.
So what is it that you want us to know about the cost burden in Northampton and Black residents?
I feel like if you do, when you look at it, they're probably more likely to spend half of their income when they do move to Northampton.
So that's the burden, the higher.
Yeah. So they're more likely to spend more than 30%, or if not, more than 50%. So they're more likely to be severely cost burdened, which adds to the disparity that we see. So, any other questions? So yeah, so as mentioned before, with a lot of these studies, especially with like working with data, there could be a lot of limitations with that. So the main problem that I found with Northampton specifically was that, it was hard to kind of gauge, specifically the Black population due to like smaller sample sizes of Black residents. There were some cases where the data was either incomplete or didn't exist. And I think I do have reason to believe that they could likely not be underestimating the amount of Black people that really do live here. So it could be more. So I feel like in regards to that, it may not accurately represent the Black population. And then lastly, I think that the results are likely to be underestimated due to the fact that I think there may be more. So as far as key takeaways, from what I've learned, I know that it's very fair to say that national and state data, they consistently show income disparities. Black residents, I found, were twice as likely to live in poverty in Northampton than white residents, and that was seen in the graphs that I shown below. And the data basically suggests that Black residents living in Northampton are more likely to spend more than 50% of their income. And I think, and lastly, as mentioned before, as we mentioned in some of the last meetings, or as I've seen, discriminatory housing policies and barriers to ownership, it continues to affect the Black wealth, and that is primarily seen through home ownership due to the low levels. So for next time, my plan is to conduct further investigation regarding housing preferences and how that might impact the ability for people of color, specifically the Black population, to access affordable housing. So, yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all that work. Yeah. Questions?
What questions do you have?
There you go. Questions. Who's first? I was curious about something real quick. I know that I remember that and I was just looking for it, that Northampton's, the Health and Human Services, was doing a survey, and I don't know if the results were ever published, or do you know anything about that at all in relation to this? Because you were mentioning the challenge of data collection, and they just may not be done with the survey. But there was, in November, they put out a survey to maybe check out to see what the results are, if they have made them public yet, because, yeah, it's there as a tool for us to maybe take a look at. So I wanted to make that comment. So other questions? Yeah, it's right here. It's the Northampton. It's the citywide. Well, it's the Community Health Needs Assessment, CHNA, and yeah, exists as a thing to take a look at. Because as I said, yeah, because you had mentioned, obviously it's very challenging with such a small percentage of African Americans, and you think about even data collection. Obviously, it's challenging when people live here and work here and are out. So Other questions or comments about housing? Yeah, Jasmine.
I think I would also look into, in terms of how home ownership, the extremely high tax rates of Northampton.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's something my household is struggling with right now. Is every year it gets raised higher and higher. It's insane. And also the rental agencies in Northampton and the way that they create barriers for people and how expensive those down payments have to be. The what is it they make you pay? The like first last security. That's what I'm going for. Yeah, those are absurdly expensive.
Right.
I remember looking at Rent NoHo back when I was a UMass student and being blown away by their pricing. And then also looking at the rental rates for rooms alone in Northampton and how much people can get away with charging for those rooms alone. I think the minimum right now is about $800 for a single room. And the lack of housing facilities for that take Title IX, or not Title IX, I always get that one, Section 8 numbers, and we don't get along. You're very good at numbers. Congratulations on such a beautiful PowerPoint.
Thank you.
Because we're on that topic, Marsha, I believe there might be people at the round table, what's her name, who does work around housing. Because remember, Sage, you went to that panel at St. John's?
Yeah.
And so that might be a resource to find out. And I don't know, Sage, if you wrote down the name of the organization that sponsored it, but it was around reparations, it was around thinking about housing. And so that might be an avenue to tap into to gather more information. So, yeah, Imacon.
Yeah, my thing is, in terms of housing, is trying to develop home ownership so that at some point we can have generational wealth in Northampton, something that could be handed down from family to family, different generations growing. And I would, do you think that possibly if there was a fund created to help first-time home buyers?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, that would be a great way to at least start, create an opportunity give them an opportunity, give the community an opportunity to where they at least have a down payment.
The down payment and also to cover the closing costs too.
Right. Yeah. The realtor fees.
Right.
Yep.
And the lawyer fees. Right.
This goes right back to the data you've been working on, and is very helpful for us in our recommendation, because now we can take that and put that as data to show. Because I was pretty, my comment is that I was, blown away in a negative sense at looking at the reality of poverty rates and wealth disparity, and the quantity, how much people are paying. That was very informative, and I can't say it's all that surprising. When you see the numbers, it makes it more stark, and so I do think that this is something we need to make sure we put in the report. When we mentioned the sections in the report about housing affordability, recommendations, Imacon, as you mentioned, and then of course going back to the financial institutions of the community that have been engaged in practices historically, maybe now it's time to really think about ways to repair might be to really think about those loans. And so, yeah, other comments? Yeah, go ahead, Bill, and then I'll look at just you, Garrick. I saw you. Go ahead, Bill. You first, and then.
Just one quick comment. The actual tax rate doesn't go up. The actual tax rate goes down. But the evaluation of properties, which under our assessments in Massachusetts has to be 100%, the property values go up, and so the taxes go up, and they have gone up significantly.
Yeah.
So it's a footnote. I'd like to know, if I could you go back to the data with regard to the percentage of black families that are severely impacted versus the percentage of white families in Northampton?
Right, we talked about that.
Yeah.
That was very tough.
So I think that's a slide 13. Yep. No. Yep. Go back forward. Forward. Forward.
And,
Yeah, right after. Yep.
and in terms of the cost burden, do you have any sense of the historical levels of all of this and how the black population overburdening of housing costs compares to white overburdening or severe burdening? I'm sorry, that's the phrase you use. How they compare over time? Or is that not something you got into?
So I think here, when we look at the differences in terms of like the black population, when looking at Northampton specifically, it's 53.07%. And then when comparing that to the white population, that was 13.57%. So in terms of like the historical background, I wish I would have gone a little bit more into that.
You could look back to the census before this.
Yeah.
So we could look back, 50 years even.
That'll be a lot of work.
Yeah.
That is like a good 2 years of
Going back in time to see what that looks like. But yeah,
Really
it's a
putting
good
that
question.
Well, trying to get to the question, is it getting worse?
Right.
I mean, I understand there are limited hours
Yeah, that's
in the month, but no, and thank you very much for this presentation.
Oh, no.
Very edifying.
Garrick had a comment or a question.
First, I just want to thank you for that really detailed presentation, Melissa. Thank you for trying to comb through the data, and as I said before, sometimes that lack of data is tough. I want to direct you to something that I worked on when I was chair of the Community Resources Committee. We did have a public forum on rental brokers fees. There was a lot of good information on that, and I can go back in my notes, but I believe that was in, sorry, it's like I'm not here when I'm sitting. I believe that was in April of 2022, but there should be minutes and notes if you really want to dive into it.
Yeah.
April 2022. And was there ever a report done, Gary, or just some hearings?
It was just a forum. And
forum.
We were working on.
Yeah.
But a lot of that data, everything is public record, so I would look at the community resources notes for that, and I could try and dial in on it, but as soon as I heard Jasmine talking about those fees, it kicked me back to the past. The other thing, and I'm not certain, because I did step away for a second, if you discuss, but I'd be interested in, especially for our work, is whether we could start getting data on how long Black residents have been living here, whether they're folks who have been here for generations, versus folks who are kind of transitory. So I think that, for me, would just kind of paint a picture of two things. One, how long are people of color staying in our community? And then two, whether or not people are just here for a little bit after they graduate and just leaving, and why would that happen? Because I think it, for me, would paint a broader picture of what is happening in Northampton. So if we could, I don't know if that data is available, but it would be very interesting for me to just see what those trends are, because I think that how long people are staying is connected to a lot of other things: support, housing rates, et cetera.
So some of the anecdotal comments in the survey do mention this, Garrick. So we'll, definitely, we will certainly take those comments that talk about the reasons people are leaving, around housing and things, and put them in the final report, even if they're not, big data, but definitely in terms of people's comments. Other questions or comments? Well, this generous use of time.
Is there any?
Yeah, Rachel has another one, or has a new one.
First of all, thank you so much. That was a really good presentation. We can definitely use this information. And even for information that we feel like, well, we kind of know it, to see it like presented in the way that you did is a really stark reminder. Also, to see the comparison with the state and the nation was very helpful as we focused mostly on Northampton. but to see that comparison, I really appreciated it. So I wanted to thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. If there aren't any more questions, it's okay if we reach out if we think of other questions that we're wondering about as well?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Melissa's going to come back. There's some anomalies in public housing policy that we want to follow up on that directly speaks to policy development that we can make comments that we could look at in terms of recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They give you an A this semester. So let us know about recommendation letters. Okay, I have like 5 I have to do right now. Our last item on the agenda is, we have more?
Sorry, I'll be.
You don't need to apologize. I thought,
Wonderful.
yeah. Hi, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm also a public health major, graduating in like a month. So I was working on the survey. We wanted to get a better understanding of the scope of this issue. So working off of the other Northampton survey we have, we made one that was more specific to the high schoolers. And we have 2 formats. We have a paper format and a online format, which can be done. I have it on my phone right now, so it's super easy for the high schoolers. But our first few questions are just asking about specific instances of racism, and we also talk about microaggressions just because we want to get examples of the less obvious instances. And these are just yes, no, maybe questions, but we do have a space provided for students to go in depth on the experience or, mention whatever they want. And then following those questions, we have some more specific questions on where this took place. Was it at school, work, public setting, and, who was involved in it. So a police officer, a teacher, another student. And then to speak on what Melissa was discussing, we wanted to get some demographic information. So as someone just mentioned, we did ask how many years the students have been living in Northampton, which could suggest how long the family's been there as well. We could also add a question maybe like, were your parents raised in Northampton or whatnot? Some other basic demographic information, gender identity, grade. And we also did add a question about housing. So we want to know if our students are living in apartments with family members, temporary housing. This will add to our demographic information. And then lastly, we just ask the students if they're willing to participate in additional interviews. And if they are, they can give us their contact information, and we don't really know how many responses we're going to get back from that, so that's something we'll plan in the future. But we're planning to administer this survey this Friday the 4th and next Friday the 11th.
Great. And actually, because you said that, good contingent will be at the Power of Truth on Friday. So I don't know if y'all have the survey ready to roll, but if you have like a QR code.
Yeah, I do have a QR code.
Perfect. So let's get that going, and we can either maybe put it in poster form to put it on the wall at Power of Truth. I'll mention at the introduction. So that's great.
Any other questions or suggestions on what we should maybe add?
Yeah. Bill.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a suggestion, but it's a question. As I understand it, the data around Amherst is actually significantly skewed because of students. And student populations change everything about statistical surveys. For example, Amherst comes out as a relatively impoverished community because there's a large percentage of the population, when students are included, who don't make very much.
Yeah.
Not a big surprise. My question was whether or not that does or does not apply in any significant way to Northampton, going back in part to the question of how long are people who are members of the black community here for? Were their parents here, were they not? Or are there students who have come and are living here because, for whatever reason, Northampton is preferable to Amherst? So it's a question more than a suggestion, but that might or might not explain some of the data, and I'd be interested.
Yeah, we were wondering in that 900 number if that includes like Smith College students or not. So I agree. I think that's definitely a concern that's important.
Yeah, and also, yeah, I think that when Smith College is interested in doing the survey, so the version that you guys are working on, perhaps that might be the survey we use, right?
That was something that I wanted to meet with you around. I'd asked Sage to set up an appointment for us to talk about how we could apply this survey to the college students.
Perfect.
As opposed to the longer survey.
Yeah.
But I think what Bill is asking is a good question around, are the young people from this area, are they from Northampton even, which would also tell us something about whether or not Smith is, what is that, the Comstock, Ada Comstock, and whether or not they're giving. So we may need to add some questions to this, because this is really focused around high school students.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we're not asking them how much their parents make, because oftentimes they don't know.
Yeah.
But if they're living in public housing, if they're living in, in a homeless shelter like that, we'll get a better sense of as much as young people know about their parents.
Great, yeah, Jasmine.
It seems like my understanding of this is we've got the high school students survey, right? That's what you're talking about right now?
Yes.
And we've got the community survey that we're handing out to the members of the town. And then it was also brought in the idea of the Smith College, and maybe a Smith College survey could be a little different too, that just focuses on, like accessibility through housing and jobs in the town.
Right, that's why I wanted to set up an
appointment,
because I think we need to tailor the Smith one, and that we can get out those questions that you were talking about. Now, whether or not we can know whether or not they're part of that 900 people is important. And I hadn't thought about, is there a way we can know that definitively? And that hadn't come up yet. That's a good question.
Could you just put a survey question of like, check yes or no, have you filled out a survey from us previously?
That's a good idea.
I wonder if Smith College has specific numbers on like just their student population. So I'll have to look at that as well.
And we've had, I've actually had an email correspondence with their dean, and so hopefully they will be amenable to sharing some of that information, that they've already gathered. You know what I mean? So we don't have to do, it's not anything that's necessarily new around this. So yes, I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good suggestion. And
right, because they should have rates on their black students just from their own collection.
Yeah, and I still, I want to hope that they're generous with sharing it with us. Of course, they wouldn't have to, and it would be public record if they did. So, but like I said, it seems that so far, the interactions I've had digitally, and then I met with Charity, have been encouraging and interested in sharing. You know what I mean? So I should the high school as well. So, all right, we are coming up on 6:45. Let's get. Should we
any questions?
I might.
Apologies, Felicia, I didn't see you. Sorry. Yes, please, chime in.
It's not specific to this, so before we move on to the interviews, I did have a question in regards to community engagement.
Yep.
And I know that we had the opportunity through the Center for Racial Justice and Youth Engagement Research at UMass to participate in the teach-in. And so I just wanted to ask Jeremy, because I've been trying to get in touch with you and Sage and send some emails. Have you all seen those? And if so, can we move forward with that? Because I know that she's looking for an answer.
I did see the email very recently from you on the social justice thing. I'm not 100% sure about it actually happening at the high school or something. The BSU has already done they usually every year do a social awareness for teachers and for staff, and so I would probably most likely get you in contact with Tashana and Kendall, and if you want to do a collaboration for, like probably wouldn't be this year, but probably, next year's, not next year, but next school year's, when it starts up, because that's when they usually do it. Project that, I think that could be something, so a good collaborative effort there.
Great. If you could someone just respond to the email so that I can send that back to Dana, and either if it doesn't happen this year, if folks want to do it next year, that could be a possibility.
Great.
Thank you.
All right.
Anything else for Lindsay?
Lindsay, thank you. Apologize for neglecting you there.
All good, all good.
Thank you for presenting it. We look forward to seeing more of your work. Thanks. Okay. And last on our agenda is just an update from Imicon about in-depth interviews. I had a chance to read some that were online, but any quick updates about how it's going and how yours went?
They're going good.
Gotta press your button.
Yeah.
They're going good. My main focus is on, as I said before, is on housing, but there's some people that have suggested also education in Northampton to bolster that up as well as the housing issue, to make sure everybody is getting a proper education so that they can go on and build a life.
Great. Well, we have some, sort of minutes from minutes. There's some information about some of the in-depth interviews I had a chance to read. And so if you want to take a look at those, they're in the folder. If others have people that they're able to, please.
How many in-depth interviews have been done?
I was just looking at them.
We've finished 3, and there are 8 more people we have scheduled or in the process of scheduling.
So,
excellent.
my concern about that was usually you use the data from the survey to help develop the in-depth interview. So is that?
Questions?
Yeah.
That's where the questions came from that was where the questions came from for the in-depth interviews. Were basically taken from the survey by and large.
Okay.
And just reduced to like the ones that could be answered through an interview.
Yeah, they're like 5 questions in total. Mm-hmm. And then, if there's a follow-up, I added on after.
So, let's, as opposed to the way we did the survey, it'd be good to look at the information that's coming back, kick it around, and then make sure that the tools gets what we're really looking into. So like you all just introduced some things that we hadn't thought about. So it'd be great to see the 3 interviews that were done and use that as a way to say, okay, are these the right questions to be asking? And I thought we were going to make a bigger push toward getting more people for the survey, to have more people fill out the survey. Because we were
bigger
at, what,
push.
300?
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm supportive of it. I personally haven't been able, Marcia, to do a bigger push than we've done. But I mean, yeah, so anyway. But I mean, Smith College students would definitely be a push because they said they would do it. We have the high school students. We have Lindsay in the back raising her hand. I recognize you, Lindsay.
I can make a QR code for the regular Northampton survey for Friday.
Great. That would be helpful, yes.
Already. That's how a lot of people have accessed it. Thank you, though.
Okay.
As a relatively new member on the commission here, my question is, how will the survey be implemented? How will it be going out to the community, different groups, or?
So right now we have data, we have the survey results, and so we're using them to inform the actual study. So we're going to use comments people have made, some of the demographic information to put together to share with City Council and the entire world, actually, when we post it, but also anyone who's interested in any of the information and the data. But its ultimate goal, it's a tool. It's a limited tool, but it's a tool. In-depth interviews are a tool. Having people come are a tool. All of it's informing our views about reparative action that the city could take.
What would really be helpful is if we could get what we've gotten so far out of the surveys and the answers compiled, so you can just read them. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
boom.
they're actually available to all the commissioners in the folder, ready for you all. Y'all can look at them too. We'll share. So they have been compiled.
Rachel had a comment that they were harder to read.
I think we got them in
terms of.
Can I answer? I I did read them today, and it was painful to read. That's what, when I say harder to read,
Yeah.
I did, that it was, I could read them. I was able to read them, but it was really some deep comments in there, and I recommend that people take a look at it.
Yep.
So with that, if we could kick around what the questions are for the in-depth interviews
Okay.
and the focus groups that we intend to do, because we'll run at least 1 or 2 focus groups with the high school students, and
Yeah.
so hopefully
That's fine.
we'll run a couple of focus groups with community people.
Yeah, we did. We've done 2. We can do more if people want to organize them. That's great. I mean, we're getting to the end here, so we're using information we have and trying to gather as much more as we can. So if people can get on that, and organize it as soon as possible, that'd be great. Actually, so
I would think that one thing we might be able to do is ask the mayor's office to send out the survey, because they can do a blast email to all of the residents in Northampton.
Okay, yeah, we'll look into that again. I can't. I've lost track, actually, on my asks. I thought that I had something in that regard, but I'll look back into that.
And then we have 298 people that we got from Carolyn, that was from that original group at the Forbes Library, and we're going to send out a letter to them asking for Black residents, if people know of Black residents or Black residents, to see if we can pull in some more Black residents.
Great. Yeah, let's, if we could get it done as soon as possible, we can get at least a draft up of the report for us to kick around. I think that would be really great. So, thank you.
Do we want to maybe talk about taking some of that on, like if people would be willing to take that on, and then we could discuss that next meeting?
Yeah, so the goal is, and I don't mind assigning, so as the plane's landing here, I had mentioned that I'm hoping people will take on elements to write. My plan is I asked Sage to begin the process, and then of us assigning people to work on sections of that. Mm-hmm. I mentioned, some of us have already done a community engaged work, that if people could write about what they've already done, that would be instrumental to us getting the process done. In addition to that, I will send out specific emails saying, listen, can you take this? Perfect. Can you take that? Yeah. So there's not overlap. Someone needs to coordinate that so people aren't doing the same thing. So I will get on that ASAP. Tomorrow I have time to do it. So, yeah, just to specifically say, can you work on these early meetings? Can you do this? Can you do that? Yeah. So I will do that.
I think it's important to note that we're now a part of a statewide piece, and so we need to approach the report, I would think, in a more traditional way with some analysis, and to ensure that, because people are now going to look at what we're doing, and we're one of the first cities to do this, so people usually look at that for some roadmaps.
I agree with you, and I am looking forward to actually collaborating with Worcester first, since I work there, to encourage them based on our lead. So I can really agree with you. I think that's sort of my anxiety about making sure it's good, because it's going to be forever, and also is leading. So I agree with you 100%.
Right, and I think that based upon what I saw at that small group, some of the legislative work and some of the work that Amherst has done, we can take in that information and make some recommendations based on what they have completed. That's the importance of reading the reports from before and being able to say, these people learned that you have to do certain things in certain ways so that you don't have to worry about, if you want to set aside money, there's a way to do that. Yep. And we note that in the report that's a group that has done that already, and they've told us the lessons that they've learned from that. So that's something that we should I've thought of having, what's that guy's name? Shabazz, come and talk about that, because that was a really important piece that we should not leave out of the report.
And actually, Amilcar actually did share with us at the other Reparations Day meeting, Marsha, which maybe I can get the transcript of. He shared some of the updated frustrations that Amherst is dealing with, and so I took some notes on it. My mom actually took a lot of very extensive notes on it. So yes, I agree with you. And as we're writing our draft, I definitely believe we need to touch base and to find out as much as we can about the challenges that they're facing right now and implementing the funds that they do have. So completely agree with you. We met recently with some people in Evanston. We'll include that in the report. That's sort of new. So yeah, the goal is to take all that, share it with you all, but and I plan on doing that. So, all right, it is 6:58. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, please.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Second.
All right, let's get some dinner because I'm starving.
Yeah.
All right. Oh yeah, roll call. Good Lord. This is the reason I'm never going to be in politics, Garrett. In and of itself, this is the reason. You got me on film. Okay, motion adjourned. Bill Newman.
Yes.
Felicia.
Yes.
Garrett.
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yes.
I don't think Marissa's on. Marsha.
Yes.
Usman, yes. Rika. Rachel.
Yes.
Jasmine.
Yes.
Imacon.
Yes.
Okay. Everyone we'll be in touch soon. Look for y'all for the emails and yeah, see you all soon.